When you are discipling a new follower of Jesus, one of the essential habits that you need to teach them is the habit of regularly fellowshipping with other believers. This is so important, and that's why the writer of Hebrews in the Bible, he wrote to the church and he said, "And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds." Here's the key sentence. Verse 25, he says, "Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." He says, man, this is so important that you establish the habit of meeting together for godly fellowship, to spur one another on to love and good deeds, and to encourage one another, and all the more as the day of the Lord approaches us. And then in Acts chapter 2:42, 3,000 people had just been added to the church. And Acts 2:42 tells us 4 activities that these new believers devoted themselves to continue growing strong in the grace of God. It says that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and to the breaking of bread and to prayer. And the thing I want to focus on in this video is being devoted to the fellowship of believers. They were devoted to meeting together, to loving one another, to encouraging one another, to praying together, to learning the Word of God together, taking the Lord's Supper and worshiping Jesus together, holding one another accountable. All these things are part of being devoted to the fellowship of the believers. I have found that it is nearly impossible for someone to continue walking with God over the long haul without the strength that God imparts through regularly interacting with other believers. I can say for sure in my own life with absolute certainty that I would not be the man that I am today without the encouragement, the accountability, the inspiration, strength, and wisdom that God has imparted to me. But He's not just done it directly, He's done it through my interaction with my church family. For this reason, godly fellowship must be a big rock priority in the life of every disciple of Jesus. Okay, let me explain what I mean by that. Years ago, I heard a story about a college professor teaching a class about time management. And one day, he brought an aquarium, a large glass aquarium, to the classroom for an illustration. And in front of the class, he began to take these large rocks and put them in the aquarium and until it filled up and he couldn't fit any more in. And then he asked the class, he says, "Hey, can I put any more rocks in here?" And they said, "No, there's no way. If you put any more, it's going to topple over. It won't fit." And so then he smiled, and from underneath the table, he pulled out this sack of like gravel, and he began to pour the smaller rocks into the aquarium, and they filled in all the spaces between the large rocks until it was so full he couldn't get any more in. And then he asked the class, he says, "Can I get more in here?" And they smiled. They're like, "Yes, we're on to you now. You can get more in." So he pulled out this bag of sand from underneath the table, and he poured the sand into the aquarium, and it filled all the tiny crevices between the other rocks until he could get no more in. Finally, he looked at the class and he asked the question. He says, "What lesson does this illustration teach about time management?" And one of the young men in the class raised his hand and he said, "I know." He says, "No matter how full our schedules get, we can always squeeze more in if we get creative." And the professor smiled and he says, "Oh, that was a good try." He says, "But no, that's not the lesson that I'm teaching." He says, "Here's the lesson." He says, "If I had not put the big rocks in first, I never would have fit them in at all." And there are big rock priorities. There are habits that we need to form as followers of Jesus and that need to become big rock priorities in our lives that we build into our schedule first before everything else, and every other activity we build around those big rock priorities. And the habit of godly fellowship, regular edifying fellowship with other believers, is a big rock priority that we have to build into our schedule. You know what? I've been involved in making disciples of Jesus for nearly 25 years, and I have never seen a new believer continue walking with Jesus without getting faithfully planted in a church fellowship. Ever. I can't think of one. I've been diligently involved nearly 25 years in making disciples for a long, long time. But I'll tell you what I have seen. I've seen many believers who start out excited about Jesus, and a year, 2 years, several months later, that you can't even find them anymore. They're gone. They're not serving the Lord. They're back in sin like they were before because they did not make it a priority to be faithfully participating in a church family. This is so important. I've seen the devil do this over and over again. One of his tactics, when somebody gets saved, they get on fire for God, and they love being around their church family, and they're learning so much. And then all of a sudden, he gives them a new job where they just can't meet with their church family anymore. Or he brings some other distraction or hobby or new boyfriend, new girlfriend, whatever it is, into their life where they just start getting distracted and saying, I don't want to go. And what they just slowly start falling away from the Lord because they did not establish that habit of regularly participating in godly fellowship in a church family. And so for this reason, I encourage, and I want to encourage you to have every disciple make a church fellowship plan. So here is how I help new believers establish the habit of godly fellowship in their lives. I help them make a church fellowship plan, and the way I do that, you can see, by the way, if you look at the, you can see how I do this on the 5 Habits of a Fruitful Life disciple-making worksheet. I will post it below this video so you can click on it, open it, print off as many copies as you want, download it if you want to. And on practice number 4, I have the questions that I'm going to talk with you about right now. And this is how I help somebody make a healthy church fellowship plan. So the first question I ask them is, what church family will you regularly meet with, and when do they meet? And I have them answer that question. You know, it may be a discipleship group that they're meeting with regularly, and that's fine. You know, they may have a job, they work on Sunday mornings, and I'm like, that's okay. Just join a discipleship group that's meeting on some other time of the week, but or start a discipleship group and gather others with you. But when are you going to meet with your church family on a weekly, regular basis, at least a weekly basis? And when are they going to meet? What church family are you going to be a part of? And I have them answer those questions specifically. After that, I ask them how they are going to participate in that church family by having them answer 5 yes or no questions. And the first one is this, is I asked them, are you praying and worshiping with your church family regularly? And so, they're not just meeting with other Christians to play video games or to watch the NBA playoffs or, to watch a movie together. I mean, it's great that they can do those things, but the purpose of the godly fellowship is that they're doing the biblical activities that build up their faith in the Lord and keep them growing strong in the grace of God. So one of those is, are you praying and worshiping Jesus with your church family regularly? Not just on your own life by yourself, but with your church family. Are you praying corporately with them? And they answer yes or no. Second question, I asked them, are you learning the Bible with your church family? Are you guys opening the Word and learning it? Maybe somebody's teaching or preaching type style, or maybe it's a Bible study discussion format. Whatever it is, are you learning the Bible together? And then number 3, are you giving to your church family? Are you giving, tithes and offerings? Are you participate in giving with your church family? That's a biblical practice that church families do, and everybody needs to participate in. And they answer yes or no to this question. And then number 4, I asked them, are you being held accountable to live a godly life by your church family? And, are they, are they holding you accountable in areas that you need to grow in? When you sin, do they talk to you about it and say, listen, how can I help you overcome this? And do they help you forgive others when they offend you, and bless your enemies, and learn to love one another well? Are you being held accountable to obey the Great Commission and live a godly life? Yes or no? Number 5, are you serving your church family? Are you serving them? You don't just show up at the discipleship group or the church service and sit there, listen to the guys sing the songs, and then check out and leave. You don't show up 15 minutes late and then take off as soon as it's over. Are you investing in the church family and the mission that the family is doing? Are you serving there? Are you serving other people who need to be served? Are you praying for them? Are you giving to those that are in need, etc.? There's lots of ways that you can serve. And I have them answer yes or no to all 5 of those questions. And then what I do, third, is I praise them for the ways that they are already participating in their church family. I'm like, that's so awesome. You're worshiping regularly. You're being faithful. You're meeting regularly. That's so good. But maybe they're not giving and they're not serving or whatever it is. So I praise them for what they're already doing, and I celebrate and affirm them to continue doing that all the more. But then I help them set goals to begin participating in the areas that they said no to. So if there was an area they say, right at the beginning, I don't have a church family that I'm meeting with regularly. And I say, okay, let's get you one. I know of some groups that I can help you join and be a part of. Or I'll start one with you. Get who are 2 or 3 friends that you know that you can invite that would be willing to start meeting with you for Bible study. And let's start a discipleship group and a church family with you. So I help them set goals so that they can engage in godly fellowship in all 5 of these key areas and do it as a regular habit for the rest of their life. So that is how I help every person I disciple to establish the essential life-giving habit of regular godly fellowship with other believers. And I want to ask, what about you? Is godly fellowship a big rock priority in your life? I encourage you to make your own church fellowship plan and then start practicing it right away this week. And then train every believer that you disciple to build this practice into their own lives. Again, you can find the disciple making worksheet, which has all these questions for a church fellowship plan, posted below this video. And I thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful to you, would you please like it, subscribe to my YouTube page, and then share it with other people.